In a cluttered Albuquerque apartment, police officers responding to a routine welfare check pulled aside a pile of debris, opened a blocked freezer, and found the hidden remains of 69-year-old Ernestina Lucero. The man living inside that apartment, who had been sleeping mere feet away from the freezer for weeks, was her 49-year-old son, Leroy Vallejo. Years before this discovery, the same police department had stood in this same apartment and warned Ernestina that her son was a lethal threat who would likely kill her. This flowchart illustrates the specific dilemma Ernestina faced when Leroy's violent paranoia first surfaced. She could press criminal charges and send her ill son to jail, or she could refuse to cooperate with police and keep him in her home, untreated and highly volatile. She chose to protect him. By refusing to press charges, she kept Leroy out of the prison system, but it meant she was now entirely responsible for managing his worsening psychosis alone, within those same four walls. Her maternal sacrifice, the decision to shield her son from a criminal record, built the exact conditions for the prophecy to become reality. The conditions inside that apartment remained a secret until a care worker initiated a welfare check. Neighbors told the responding officers they had heard violent arguments for weeks before Ernestina vanished. When Leroy finally opened the door, he was sweating, disoriented, and barely making eye contact. He claimed his mother had abruptly left town with an old boyfriend to travel to Mexico. The apartment told a different story. A foul odor filled the rooms. Clutter covered the floors, and thick black trash bags were stacked in high piles near the kitchen. Inside the bedroom, Ernestina's clothes were still in the closet, and her essential daily medication sat untouched on the nightstand. As police searched, Leroy paced the living room, claiming he was being stalked by dark forces and witches who were trying to control his mind. One officer stepped into the kitchen and noticed several heavy objects had been deliberately arranged to block the door of a large chest freezer. Leroy claimed he put the objects there to keep rats away. The officer moved the clutter, lifted the lid, and recognized the shape of a human body beneath layers of black plastic. Every stacked bag and blocked appliance in that kitchen stood as physical evidence of a psychosis that had been left to fester for years. Inside the interrogation room, Leroy's testimony shifted between weeping, apologizing to his mother's memory, and claiming that demons had guided his hands. He eventually admitted he strangled Ernestina, thoroughly convinced she was a witch who had spent years trying to destroy his life. Then, Leroy offered a second confession. He began talking about a man connected to the family, Ernestina's former boyfriend, who had disappeared years earlier after staying in that same apartment. Leroy described the mechanics of that earlier killing, explaining how he shot the man while he slept, using a pillow as a silencer, before dismembering the remains. Police later recovered tools from the apartment that matched his description. This timeline tracks the escalation of his illness over several years. It shows how his paranoia began with conspiracy theories surrounding the boyfriend and gradually grew in severity until it focused entirely on his mother. Investigators realized they weren't looking at a single domestic homicide, but a years-long string of killings that had been hidden behind the apartment walls. After confessing to both murders, Leroy looked at detectives and told them his nightmares finally stopped after his mother died. Law enforcement had no legal path to intervene earlier. Without a victim willing to press charges, the state had no way to mandate psychiatric care, leaving the situation to escalate in private. Ernestina had accurately predicted her own murder to the authorities, yet she was left to manage a violent, deteriorating man without any professional assistance. The discovery in the freezer was the ultimate outcome of a decade where Ernestina's only options were the floor of a jail cell for her son or the floor of her own apartment.